Hey City fans, unusual settings. Normally we would be down at the game previewing whoever City are coming up against next, but we're not going to do that because there's a fantastic segment on our latest Talking City podcast that goes into the Arsenal game tomorrow exceptionally well. Listen, if you want to hear the full thing, the Talking City podcast is available on all audio platforms, so make sure you check that out wherever you want. Whatever your preferred audio platform is, make sure you go check that out. But I'm going to pass you over to my esteemed colleagues, Dan Murphy and Simon Bajkowski. Take it away, lads. Cheers.
How was the performance in kind of general? Do you see this team, other than the kind of left back thing, being what he kind of settles on going forward now? Like you say, it seems like since that, it's the first really comprehensive, no stress display since that United win, which we've often said that was probably the last time. Those two wins are back to back, wasn't it? United and Southampton back to back. They scored 10 goals in 2 games. It feels like since them 2 games, I think they lost to Liverpool after the Southampton match, didn't they? It feels like them 2 matches are the last time they played really, really well and looked like themselves. And it's been kind of a few months of, don't get me wrong, they've had good moments. They've won most of the games, but it's definitely felt like a few months of kind of being lost in the weeds a sort of bit. And now maybe they've finally cleared out. Guardiola kind of has always, especially in defence, he kind of settles on the players. If they play well, he doesn't drop them, sort of thing. Is that what's going to happen here? Obviously, there's going to be rotation here and thereabouts. There's Champions League games coming up and whatnot, and obviously a big match on Wednesday. But part of the, in general, is this going to be his strongest team going forward?
Yeah, I think certainly plenty of fans would like that 11 to be more or less the strongest 11 City have got. I think, he took Diaz off at half time after Diaz he got booked for one of those strange things that we saw over the weekend about him being like the third one to approach the referee. And so Pep said, it took him off because he was on a yellow card, which suggests that he wants him at least for Arsenal and, we'll use him more in the future. He spoke pre-match about needing his leadership. So I think we'll see more of Diaz. He spoke glowingly about Kyle Walker after the game. And yeah, I mean, De Bruyne had his best match in a long time. Ilkay Gundogan looked very, very sharp. Bernardo, Rodri was a different player from the one that sort of stank out the Tottenham Hotspur stadium. And that resulted in more service to Haaland than he's had for a good while. So, it's hard to say this will be the 11 or the system. I think the system will have tweaks, but for too long, too many players have been out of form, and there were signs on the pitch that players were coming back into form. And Guardiola said afterwards that he's noticed a difference in training in the last 7 days, which would suggest an upturn as well.
Well, it's certainly the best timing for that to be as well. I mean, I think you've said a few weeks now, this could be the turning point, this could be the turning point, and it's kind of not been. There've been fits and starts, but I feel like this match genuinely does feel like this could be the point where it's finally clicking again. And now, if they can go on a run now, it's going to be quite dangerous for Arsenal, as we'll touch on soon. But like I say, Haaland, his assist, I thought, was absolutely excellent because he goes through and I'm like, oh my, it was like seeing a caged animal finally freed. He's like, finally got in behind the defence. I've not seen it in weeks. And instead of shooting, I was like, what's he done there? How's he not shot at that? I mean, it would have sailed in, but he didn't. And his assist was almost like a shot, the way he dragged the ball across the face of goal. But it was an excellent pass. And he didn't actually score in this match, and he was off at half time, but it felt like that's the Erling Haaland that we've seen score 20 goals in about 12 games at the start of the season, and who in the second half of the season has looked cut and isolated, a forlorn figure at times, a bit of a frustrated figure. He looked back to the Haaland that was taking the world by storm just a few short months ago.
Yeah, there was a bit earlier in the first half when he got put through sort of for an aerial challenge with Martinez, and Martinez, they clattered into each other. I'm not sure if that was actually the injury that ended up taking him off. Martinez's knee went into his thigh, and he needed a bit of treatment afterwards for that. But even that, just like smashing into a goalkeeper for a high ball, you could see like the smile on his face. And then, like you say, that assist, it was just incredible pace. and then he turns, and you think, why aren't you shooting? And you think the moment's lost, and then he, a trademark City goalie smashes it across the 6-yard box, and someone comes in at the back post. So there was a lot of overreaction around Haaland and his place in the team and at the club last week after the Spurs defeat. And I think so much made of, he's just a goal scorer, you lose out with him on the pitch and whatever. So I'm sure he'd have wanted to score, but for him to get an assist was probably the best response to all of that. And De Bruyne looked different, looked sharper than he's been for a while, and that probably helped. But the whole team did. But Haaland certainly looked to have that extra zip that he has not always had since the World Cup.
And yeah, we can only hope his injury isn't a serious one. It was just precautionary, and he is available for Wednesday's blockbuster clash. It's finally here, Si. The match we've been waiting for some time now, some weeks. City will face Arsenal, and I think you were the one saying that it could all change very quickly, but I don't think any of us thought at the point a few weeks ago that if City had actually win the game, they would move level. Actually, they'd move above Arsenal, even though they're going to still have would still have a match to play. This is humongous. I think a lot of people were thinking that if City kind of win this year, then the title is. You think they're back in, the momentum's back in their favour. They would probably go back to being favourites. And I think, as we said last week, Arsenal, they lost their first match for some months against Everton. And I think I was saying, I didn't like their reaction. I think even Zinchenko, the most experienced winner on that pitch, if even he's seeing his rear end a little bit and shouting at people and biting at Neil Maupay's antics, then their heads aren't right. They could well have a bit of a wobble. And then Brentford, not the best opponents to have next, and they drop more points, which, as we say, has set up this match on Wednesday perfectly.
Yeah, and also to make the point, we talked about Guardiola struggling for a moment to bring everything together, and the Premier League giving him one. For the team to come together, they came together against Aston Villa, but it's straight after these allegations. What a moment for the Premier League if their actions in charging City in the middle of the season, when there's no reason to, wait until the end of the season, while football is going on, if their actions kind of directly or indirectly contribute towards the team that they've slapped 100 charges against winning another Premier League title. I think it'd be nice to see the reaction between the players when Richard Masters is trying to give them the medals and whatnot. But, that is still a long, long way away. But City beat Arsenal in the FA Cup, and a lot of people said, well, that was great for Arsenal because they played a weakened team and they only came away with a 1-0 defeat, and they could have won the game. So fantastic for them. They've not lost anything. Well, they've not won since that game. And you called it. I called it, and I can say that I called it, and it might have made zero difference. It might just be a coincidence, but I'm claiming it. But they lost to Everton, and then it was consecutive defeats, and they've then drawn against Brentford, and now they've not won in 3. And if City beat them on Wednesday, all the pressure, all the talk will be on City are favourites now. And it's not often that it's been said that Arsenal were favourites while they've been top of the league. But the last few weeks and maybe a month, that has turned.
Since they beat United, I think everyone went favourites, didn't they?
Yeah. So there's a lot of pressure on Arsenal, and for City, they can sort of say, go out and upset another rival and upset the Premier League some more. So it's going to be a really difficult game. City haven't been great this season away at the top teams. Obviously, they've lost at Liverpool, United, Spurs, beat Chelsea, but are Chelsea a top team anymore? I don't know. But yeah, it's been difficult for them, and they've also struggled to get Haaland involved away from home kind of a lot more. So it's going to be a real challenge, but it's suddenly looking a lot rosier for City than it was, 1-2 weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I was saying, I don't think any of us expected it to be, the couple of days, a day before the game, thinking City could actually go above Arsenal if they won. It'd only be goal difference, and Arsenal do have a game in hand, which coincidentally is against Everton, who beat them, and that's going to be played on 1st of March. So they've still got 3 games to go, including City, before they are a level on matches.
But
It's
also,
a big one.
City still have to play Arsenal. So if City
exactly.
beats Arsenal, even with that game in hand,
Yep.
it's in
It's in
City's hands again.
It is. And as we were just saying, if they can go on the run now, which it kind of feels like the prime to do, maybe it'll, say it's a massive game. Arsenal quality, and even though they did lose that match, as you did say, they could have won it, and they are going to be more at full strength. It could go either way. I think they're going to be up for it just as much. It's going to be so important for them, and it has all the makings of an absolutely classic tie.
And it's really interesting as well, because we spoke after the FA Cup game and said Arsenal have strengthened in this window, City have weakened. And look how well Trossard's done.
Yeah.
But now, ahead of this game, you've got people saying, well, Trossard should be in for Martinelli. Why is he picking Martinelli still? And suddenly this team that has been so consistent, I think he's picked Martinelli and Saka in every league game. Suddenly, you've got his team and his decisions being questioned.
Discontent.
Because of the extra competition that he's brought in. So, it's a minor point. It's not going to make much difference, but it's just a sign how sometimes things can work out funny. But also, having said, I said that after the FA Cup game, I also said last week, after the Spurs game, Walker said, I know we're a team that can go on a big run. And I said, absolutely not. And, we'll see, because they've only won one game. They've not won any games in a row. They've just beaten Villa. But, like I say, the atmosphere feels completely different now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. What you're saying about the Arsenal squad, I think a lot of Arsenal fans were quite angry after the transfer window, weren't they? I believe there's Edu out, hashtag trending and whatnot. I don't know if those fans are reflective of kind of actual fans who go to their games and whatnot, and not to disparage people who can't go to games, they're not their fans, but you know what I mean. There's certain corners of internet for every fan base that might not be reflective of the general consensus. But I thought they did really well in signing players who won't be not going to be bothered if they're not first team straight away. And if they had got Mudryk and spent 80 million on him, how's he not starting? So it felt like, they've actually done the right thing. They've done well to miss out. But now if it's happening anyway, maybe they should have gone all out for Mudryk. But we're going to this game. What changes do you foresee any City making, and will one be enforced? Like if Haaland can't play, is it as simple as putting Alvarez in for him, or does he kind of make some tinkers elsewhere?
I think it is as simple as Alvarez coming in for Haaland, but at the same time, Haaland was involved in training yesterday, so we'll get an update from Guardiola today at the press conference. But I would expect Haaland to be involved. I think Nathan Ake would start at left back against Saka. We might see Akanji or Lewis come back into the team. But other than that, I think he goes Mahrez, Grealish, Haaland again. I think he probably goes Rodri, De Bruyne, and Gundogan again. Bernardo has played very well, but that is not a bad decision to have to make. But because the players are in form, it's no longer like, who might play better than they have done it in weeks. It's like who can follow up Sunday's performance, and then kind of, you've got the options of Alvarez, Foden, and whoever doesn't play out of that midfield trio on the bench to come on and make a difference. So I think, it's always a strong team, but I'd be surprised if it was a really strange team on Wednesday. I think we're back in the world of more conventional.